cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave.
Trump won, and we couldn't do nothing about it. And that's it.
I can believe that I can't fuck it.
A basic notice of appeal. So it's a very short filing that just says, okay, verdict's done, convictions now attached. We're notifying you of the appeal to meet all the deadlines. And then there'll be a more substantive appellate memorandum that comes down later. So let's say Trump goes to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court in the state of New York. Now they reverse the name. So the highest court's actually called the Court of Appeals. So they go to the highest court in New York and they get snubbed there. From there, they go up to the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court. Then they make the same argument.
Guys, I was sick yesterday.
Immune official acts evidence was brought in illegally, and Trump was immune from that evidence. So they couldn't use it against him. So the verdict needs to be reversed. So it goes all the way back up to the Supreme Court, and we do this whole thing kind of over again. Then they come back down and dismiss the case. And I think that might be what they were intimating John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett by doing this today, but time will tell. So as it stands, congratulations. Trump is a convicted felon. Doesn't matter at all because he is still your president and he's going to be the president for the next 4 years. And there will be serious investigations into this conspiracy of lawfare that has been concocted by the Democrats, not only in New York, but everywhere in Florida, DC, and Georgia. And so we hope they enjoyed themselves today. Doesn't make a damn's worth of difference. And Trump is going to be even more animated. And I got to say, it's like they still haven't learned a thing. All of their efforts to stop him elected him in many ways, and they're still doing it. And he's got 10 days until he is in the White House. So I think this is just the cherry on top. They are trying to rub it in everybody's face, but they've just done themselves more damage than they can even fathom. And Trump and our side is as animated as ever. So good stuff there on that one. And let's do a quick update on what's happening in Florida.
So yeah, I just caught a strike on my secondary channel because I was playing InfoWars on the background, not even showing it on the screen, but the audio of it, I guess, was enough for them to give me a full strike on my driving channel. So I'll be on this one most of the time from now on until that gets resolved. I've appealed it, but only appeals that I've ever been upheld were the ones where I was able to appeal to the person doing a copyright, telling them I would take it down or edit it. So anytime it's YouTube directly, they always deny my appeal. So it'll be this channel. I will be using the backup Rumble channel as well, because they can't strike that one, because that broadcast was on Rumble originally, that InfoWars, but I knew it was coming. I'm surprised it hasn't happened to this channel yet. But if you don't see me on here broadcasting, if I go more, the weekend usually I take off, but if you don't see me broadcasting on here during the week, check out the Rumble channel. Links in the description, the link trees in the description. I've got both Rumble channels listed there too as well.
Florida, this is a short update, but this is on the classified documents case as well. The 11th Circuit came back down and is now saying that Judge Cannon's stay that would prevent the Jack Smith report from being published is not valid. And it's a very short order, so we don't have a lot of details on it. But the 11th Circuit came back out. This is not good for Trump and co. because they do not want the report to come out. But this was sent down from the 11th Circuit, Walt Nada and Carlos de Oliveira receiving this order, saying that the emergency motion for injunction to stop the Jack Smith report from coming out is denied. And if the appellant, Jack Smith, wants relief from Judge Cannon, which stopped them from publishing the report, then they can file a notice of appeal. And so Jack Smith and his team, they have done that, or rather the DOJ has done that. You can see they're in the 11th Circuit now, and this is being sent off here by the appellate folks over at the DOJ, Brian Boynton, Mark Kenzie, and Mark. They're not on Jack's team anymore, but they're still fighting to get the report released. So they submitted this appeal then back to the 11th Circuit, trying to take this up from Judge Cannon. They wrote the following. They said, here, earlier this evening on January 9th, the court denied Trump's emergency motion to stop Merrick Garland from publicly releasing the final report. You said in your super short order, this is the DOJ writing, you said to the extent that the appellant seeks to stop Cannon, you can appeal. So this is what the DOJ is doing. We're notifying you. We are appealing this. And as the court knows, the order temporarily stopped the DOJ and others from releasing the final report. They said that this prohibition, Judge Cannon, would be in effect. And so now the United States is renewing our request to vacate that injunction. After considering all of the briefs, you concluded that there is no injunction that's allowed. So for the same reasons, we think that Cannon made a mistake. Now, as we've explained, Merrick Garland is not going to publicly release Volume 2. That's the classified documents volume, while proceedings against these defendants remain. But the district court had no basis for making Volume 2 available for Congress to review, the ranking judiciary people who will promptly leak this to the whole country. And the district court had no basis at all from stopping the J6 report from coming out, which relates to an entirely different prosecution that doesn't concern these two defendants, and they've got no plausible merits theory for enjoining, even though Volume 1 references Volume 2 and vice versa. Both volumes were crafted and created by Jack Smith. So given the unusual exigencies in this case, the United States renews our request to vacate the district court's injunction and let us release the report. So the report's probably coming out at some point. Not that it matters. I think it's all fake anyways. And Jack Smith has embarrassed himself multiple times. Not even a real boy. He stole $50 million. I hope he's at the top of the people investigated for abuse of office. So that's the update on that. And then we also had a great update with President Trump and the governors. And so here's what that looked like. President Trump met with the governors down at Mar-a-Lago from all over the country, and they had an interesting conversation. Trump met with them and came out and took questions. And here's what that exchange looked like yesterday. There's Trump shaking hands with everybody down at Palm Beach late last night, 7:33 Eastern time, as you can see, saying hello to everybody. And after the meeting, he came out and they took some good questions. And so let's listen in on what some of that looked like.
Beautiful day. So it's an honor to have the press. And, these are people that aren't timid. They're not afraid of the press. If you'd like to ask a couple of questions, you may. We had a very beautiful day celebrating a very nice man, a good man, great humanitarian, Jimmy Carter funeral. And thought it was a beautiful service and it went very well. And we had some very good victories today, as you probably heard. Go ahead. Any questions, Peter?
Yes, President Trump, just a few minutes ago, the Supreme Court ruled that they are not going to slow down the sentencing. It's on for tomorrow. Now what?
Well, they called for an appeal. And as you know, they acknowledged what the judge said about no penalty. And there's no penalty. But we're going to appeal anyway, just psychologically, because frankly, it's a disgrace. It's a judge that shouldn't have been on the case. He's a highly conflicted judge. And they called for an appeal. So I read it, and I thought it was a fair decision, actually. So I'll do my little thing tomorrow. They can have fun with their political opponent. As you know, I'm under a gag order from a judge. This is the first. This was an attack of a political opponent. And if you take a look at it, I'm not supposed to be talking about it, so I won't. I'm the first president and probably one of the first candidates in history that's under attack with a gag order, where I'm not allowed to speak about something. And they ought to find out what that's all about. And this is a long way from finished. And I respect the court's opinion. I think it was actually a very good opinion for us because you saw what they said. But they invited the appeal, and the appeal is on the bigger issue. So we'll see how it all works out. I think it's going to work out well. We beat Jack Smith. He's back, I hope, at The Hague, but I don't think he should be there either. He puts people in very bad positions, like giving people death penalties. I will tell you, Jack, he is a disgrace. We won all of those cases. We won most of the other cases, or they're limping along. We've had a lot of lawfare. These are all people that understand what's going on here very badly. This was an attack on the Republican Party. This was an attack on the Republican candidate who just won an election by record numbers, the highest number of Republican votes by far ever gotten. And we won all swing states, 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by millions of people. And that was the real vote. And I said it a long time ago, the real vote is that. And they tried to stop that from happening. They tried to stop this election from happening, or to bloody somebody up so badly they couldn't win. And the people got it. And again, we won by the largest number. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. It was conclusive. It was a massive, they say, the most consequential election in 129 years. And these people, the people know everything everything that you're asking. They've been studying this for 2 years as it went along, and hopefully it'll never happen again, an attack on a political opponent. So Peter will be appealing the decision. They're asking for an appeal, and that's on the fact, on what's going to happen, much more importantly than tomorrow.
Off the top, you mentioned
Great response. And Trump is reading into exactly what we were pointing out earlier, which was this statement. This can be addressed in the ordinary course on appeal, right? So just come bring this right back to us and we'll get rid of it, because you do have presidential immunity and they were in direct violation of the order from the Supreme Court that articulates how immunity works. So just address it on appeal. You came too soon. Come on back.
I think he looks better than he did a few years ago.
So that was, I think, what he was referencing more.
the Carter funeral today. What were you talking to Barack Obama about?
It did look very friendly, I must say. I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it, how friendly it looked. I saw it on your wonderful network just a little while ago before I came in, and I said, boy, they look like two people that like each other. And we probably do. We have little different philosophies, right? But we probably do. I don't know. We just got along. But I got along with just about everybody on that. We met backstage, as you know, before we went on. And I thought it was a beautiful service. But we all got along very well, which is good.
In California, what specifically do you think Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass could have done differently to prepare for this $50 billion fire?
You know, we have great governors in this room. And if you look at the way their states, I think I can say without exception, anybody doing poorly in here? I don't think so. I mean, without exception, we have great governors here that have done a great job with their states. And I don't think, and you'll probably, if there's a weak link, you're going to find it and you're going to be asking the next question of that person. Gavin Newsom had an opportunity to have millions of gallons a week, a day, millions and millions of gallons come down from the north. And I was able to get him federal approval from that, from the Department of Commerce of all departments. I didn't realize it would go through Commerce. I would have thought environmental, but it goes through Commerce. I got all of the approvals, and he said, I don't want to sign it. I don't want the water. We don't need the water. I said, you need the water. Your reservoirs are empty, but you need the water. That was 5 years ago. And I had it all done. The work was all done. We sent it to him. He refused to sign it. And if you noticed yesterday, the hydrants were empty. They didn't have any water, many of them. They said 20%, but now I just heard 50%, and now none of them have water, and that fire is still raging. When he turned that down, I was going to give him unlimited water. It would come down. It really comes down from the north, way up north, including parts of Canada. It's so much water that they wouldn't know what to do with. Just the opposite would have happened. And that's the reason that this happened. He wouldn't do what we wanted. And we're going to force that upon him now, but it's very late. Because I think it's one of the great catastrophes in the history of our nation. This is not just in Los Angeles.
Big time.
I've never seen anything like that. Devastation. And
we're
talking about homes that cost $200, $300, $400 million. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. People that, and very influential people worldwide. I don't know that they ever go back either, because, they weren't happy with California. They weren't happy with Gavin Newsom. They weren't happy with their whole lifestyle there, with the crime being out of control, all the other problems. They were not happy. And it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not they're going to build, or whether somebody else is going to build and build a much lesser home. These were the most expensive homes outside of Palm Beach County. I see a list outside of Palm Beach. These were the most expensive homes anywhere in the world. And I think a lot of them are just not going to go back and build it. Plus, they don't want to be part of a construction site. They're building a home, another one's they're building in front of them, behind them, alongside
How do
of
you
them.
build in California with all the rags?
I think it's a tragedy. I think it's an incredible tragedy. It's also a tragedy for a tax base. And the governors know exactly what I'm talking. And I'd like to hear anybody talk about that. But if you're the governor of a state and you lost thousands of very rich people that were paying a lot of taxes and weren't happy about it, and weren't happy about what's happened to California, which has all the advantages of greatness, but they've had horrible politicians. I think that Gavin is largely incompetent, and I think the mayor is largely incompetent, and probably both of them are just stone cold incompetent. What they've done is terrible. Would anybody have a comment on that? Because when you talk about losing the tax base, you're losing a lot of, you're going to lose a lot of those people permanently. Those people pay billions of dollars in taxes. Governor, what about you?
We got some great property in Louisiana.
Yeah, well, they'll be moving to a lot of your states. They'll be moving to Florida, I can tell you. I know that. But they're going to be moving to, you're going to pick up a lot, Texas. So it's a rough situation. I've never seen, I think it's one of the great catastrophes in the history of our country. Not even believable.
President Biden's term, almost over. Before he goes, there's talk that he might trade a Itmo al-Qaeda detainee, Mohammed Rahim, for 3 American hostages held by the Taliban. Should he do that?
Well, I haven't looked at it. I will be looking at it. They're showing me tomorrow morning. They're showing me that there's a trade on. That trades, I have not been in favor of the trades they've made, but I'll be taking a look tomorrow. We'll announce something tomorrow.
Don Jr. and some of your team just got back from Greenland. What's the price tag?
Well, maybe no price tag. Look, we're going to have to see what happens because Denmark, we need this for national security. We need Greenland very badly. You look at the Russian ships, the China ships, they're all over the place. They're, surrounding. Now, they have for a long time. That's a lane. But we need that for national security. So I don't know that Denmark has any right, title, and interest, and we're going to find that. But I can tell you, you saw the clips that were released. The people of Greenland would love to become a state of the United States of America. We were greeted with tremendous love and affection and respect. The people would like to be a part of the United States. Now, Denmark maybe doesn't like it, but then we can't be too happy with Denmark, and maybe things have to happen with respect to Denmark having to do with tariffs.
Yeah, it's true.
Because they have to do this, I think, for the free world. We need that to protect the free world. It's very important and getting more important every year.
When you were with all the Republican senators yesterday in Washington, which of your nominees do they think are going to have the hardest time getting confirmed?
So we had a great meeting with almost every senator, Republican senator, and I would say that first, it was a love fest. This is a love fest, too, I believe. I'll let you know in about an hour. But this is pretty much a love fest. I mean, the governors aren't exactly chopped liver, right? This is a group of people that have done a phenomenal job. And especially when you see what's going on in Los Angeles and all, you look at the way they've run their states, it's incredible. I talk about it all the time, the top 25 states, and I don't believe we have any in the list of crime. So every one of them is a Democrat-run state. We want to get along with the Democrats. I'm trying to be nice. We're going into a new term. It's going to be a great time for them. I'm going to call it the golden age. I believe we have a chance at the golden age of America. But I have to tell you, you look at the crime, it's all on the shoulders of Democrats and the way they run their states. And if these people ran those states, same people, same everything, but you put these people in those states, you wouldn't have crime like that at all.
We've been watching over the last couple of weeks. A lot of CEOs, including some who censored you 4 years ago, have been coming down here basically to kiss the ring. Did they change or did you change?
Well, maybe we all changed. I think they've gained a lot of respect. I think they looked at the mandate that we got. As you know, we won the popular vote. As I said, we won all 7 swing states. They said, well, if Trump would win, I had to win 3 because I had a lot of early voting going on, and we had to win 3, and we won all 7. And we won them by a lot. We didn't win them by a little. We won them by a lot. And we won the popular vote by a lot. I think that had an effect. I also think it's like, let's get something done. You look at what happened with Facebook today and yesterday, what they announced. That was a big concession from them. I mean, they went from I call them the unlocked boxes. They call them lock boxes. I call them the unlocked boxes because they seem to be unlocked a lot of times. But you went from the unlocked boxes into a statement yesterday that's really talking about free speech. What a difference that is. And so we appreciate that. But I think they've gained a lot of respect. We've had everybody. Jeff Bezos came, Bill Gates came, Mark Zuckerberg came. Many of them came numerous times. The bankers have all come. Everybody's coming. I haven't had anybody saying anything bad about me. I'm not used to it. But a lot of it's respect. I think they respect the Republican Party. The Republican Party has become a much bigger party. It's become a party for the worker. If you look at all of the union votes that I got, and when I say I, it's really all of us together because it's a whole thing. But we won the Teamsters. We did great with the auto workers. We did, all heavily union and non-union states. We won by a lot. Florida is an example. We won by millions of votes, the highest vote ever gotten. And so it's been a great period of time.
A ton of world leaders have called you as well. We understand still no call with Putin. Is that a day one or week one call?
No, he wants to meet, and we're setting it up. President Xi, we've had a lot of communication. And we have a lot of meetings set up with a lot of people. Some have come, but I'd rather wait till after the 20th.
And when you say meet with Putin or meet with Xi, do you guys want to have some kind of a summit, or are they going to come here?
To be determined. But President Putin wants to meet. He's said that even publicly. And we have to get that war over with. That's a bloody mess. Soldiers are being killed by the millions. I looked at some very graphic pictures yesterday. The soldiers that are being killed, it's a flat field. The only thing that stops a bullet is a body. These are it's a very, very flat land. And the soldiers are fighting, and they are dying by the hundreds of thousands. And not to mention the towns and the cities, which were, largely demolished. And there are a lot of people in there. But the big surprise, and it's going to be a very unpleasant surprise, is how many people were killed in that war. It's much higher than the press is reporting. When a building comes down, these are big buildings. They're 2 and 3 blocks long. Different kind of construction. They're long and not that tall in many cases, but they're 20 stories. But when a building like that comes down and they say nobody was injured, no, a lot of people were killed. I think the numbers are going to be much higher. And that's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it's a war that I'm going to try really to stop as quickly as I can. The number of people dying on a daily basis, and I get the reports every single day, and largely soldiers at this point. But the number of people, both Russia and Ukraine, it's staggering.
When you threatened tariffs on Canada a couple weeks ago, Justin Trudeau rushed down here. He wanted to make nice. Now he's on the way out. Is that what you wanted?
I didn't think he was going to
Speaker of TikTok Incorporated.
He probably saw the numbers. Look, I called him Governor Trudeau because they should be the 51st state, really. It would make a great state. And the people of Canada like it. They pay lower taxes. They have virtually no military. They have a very small military. They pay less than 1%. They're about the lowest payer in NATO. They're supposed to pay much more. They haven't been paying. They have a lot of problems. And I was with Wayne Gretzky. I said, Wayne, would you like to be the governor of Canada? I can't imagine anybody doing any better than Wayne. Wayne was not too interested, but I think he probably would have liked statehood. He's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. He's the great one. We call him the great one, right? He's a great hockey player. But I will say this. I think that this, it was stated pretty strongly a couple of weeks ago about Canada, and people laughed. And now they're all saying, well, it's very interesting. And I say from the standpoint of the United States, we're subsidizing Canada $200 and $250 billion a year. We have massive deficits. They've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather do it here. We could put tariffs on. We don't have tariffs on them yet, but that will happen. But they've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather have it done in Detroit or have it done in South Carolina or any other state that does cars, and we have a lot of them. We don't need Canada for that. We don't need Canada for lumber because we have big forests that we have, not utilized. In some cases, they're protected, which I can take that protection off. And you take down a tree and you grow a better tree. That's, pretty common. But we don't need anything. We don't need their fuel. We don't need their energy. We don't need their oil and gas. We don't need anything that they have. And I said to Trudeau, I said, why are we subsidizing you $200 and $250 billion a year? He said, I really don't know. And I said, well, I don't know either. I said, what would happen to Canada?
We got the audio from the sentencing coming up.
He said Canada would be obliterated if that happened. I said, then Canada should be a 51st state. And that's where we are now.
A story that kind of disappeared very suddenly. Do you have any idea whatever happened to the drones?
What happened to drones?
Well, you said that you thought the government knew what was happening with these drones over New Jersey. There were some by Bedminster.
I don't know. They're over Bedminster a lot, so I can imagine. I'm going to give you a report on drones about one day into the administration, because I think it's ridiculous that they're not telling you about what's going on with the drones. And it's not only with me. Glenn was telling me today that in Virginia they have drones all over the place too, and nobody's reporting it. I don't know why they're not. Do you want to say something about that?
Just one quick comment, which is we are home to the largest naval base in the world in Quantico, and we house a lot of the SEAL teams and have a huge national security infrastructure. And now for 2 years running, we have had drone incursion over secure airspace, and we still don't know why. And I think that's absolutely unacceptable. And I think President Trump and the new leadership coming in, I think will work diligently to understand who's behind this and what we do in order to stop the digital surveillance of all of our secure infrastructure.
Well, I can tell you this. While we were dealing with a terrorist attack in New Orleans, we had drones being flown over our nuclear reactors in Louisiana. And we brought that attention to the FAA. We've been asking the FAA to give these states the ability to mitigate these drones, and it's sitting on some bureaucrat's desk. And that's real.
Nobody knows. They don't want to talk about it. Go ahead, Governor. You're going to say?
I was just going to say we have drones in Wyoming flying over our infrastructure as well. And it's incredibly frustrating that we not only have no way of knowing what it is, but nobody knows how to deal with them.
They don't want to talk about it, and nobody knows why. They don't want to talk about it. That could be us sending drones. I hope that's the case, us doing it and doing research, and maybe they don't want to talk about it from that standpoint. I hope it's not an enemy, but we're going to find out on the 21st, the day after. You have to give me a little time for the inauguration, but shortly thereafter, we'll give you a report on it. We'll tell you exactly what it is. They know, and it's very strange that they aren't talking about it. Peter, thank you very much. Does Biden does he do this kind of a news conference?
No. This is my longest ever interview of a president.
Yeah, well, the longest ever before this was one question, and they would rush you out of the room, right? But we have nothing to hide. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right,
Peter.
that was doozy time with the president and a bunch of Republican governors, and Trump, of course, masterful in fielding those questions and explaining what his vision is for the future. But we now have breaking news audio of the Trump sentencing. Let's confirm this is working. Looks like it is. The Trump sentencing audio has been released. Let's go through the charade together of the historic felony conviction of America's favorite president. We're all felons now. And this makes Trump's second term even more epic than it was before. In Judge Mercan's courtroom, here's what we've got. Papers being shuffled around. honks in the New York background.
Thank you, Judge.
Sure.
I don't think there's anything that we need to put on the record about it.
Okay, thank you. Let's impose sentence, please.
Donald Trump, you're before the court for sentence following your conviction by trial to 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Before being sentenced, the court will allow you, your attorney, and the assistant district attorney an opportunity to address the court with any matters relevant to sentencing. For the people.
Thank you. But where's the preferred place for me to stand?
Wherever you feel comfortable.
Joshua Steinglass.
The defendant in this case, as you know, stands convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree, all Class E felonies. Each carries a range of authorized sentencing options for as much as 1 1/3 to 4 years in state prison to a variety of non-incarceratory sentences. In this court's January 3rd decision on the defendant's Clayton motion, Your Honor indicated an inclination to impose an unconditional discharge. Under all the circumstances of this case, its unique posture and the defendant's status as president-elect, the people recommend a sentence of an unconditional discharge. In finding the defendant guilty in this case, the jury necessarily found unanimously that the defendant falsified 34 separate entries in his business records with the intent to defraud, which included an intent to commit or conceal a conspiracy to promote his own election by unlawful means.
What a joke.
Having presided over the trial, Your Honor is very familiar with the conduct, its seriousness, and the overwhelming evidence to support the jury's verdict.
Okay, did you hear his giant mouthful of nonsense that came out of his mouth? They have nested everything in itself, nested multiple crimes in other nested crimes. A conspiracy to interfere with this unlawful means. What were the unlawful means? Whatever you want, tax, what? All of it bundling itself up to turn a false business record misdemeanor into 34 felonies. And then he said, and you know everything, Judge, because you presided over the trial. The whole thing is just a big word salad in order to create charges. You just heard him try to reiterate that.
I'm certainly not going to rehash that now. In last week's decision on January 3rd, this court referred to the gravamen of the defendant's conduct, his criminal conduct in this case, as constituting, quote, premeditated and continuous deception. The verdict was delivered by a jury that was carefully chosen using an extensive questionnaire based on suggestions from both parties and after thorough questioning of the prospective jurors by both sides.
And you asked,
the verdict in this case was unanimous and decisive, and it must be respected. As this court has observed, quote, the sanctity of a jury verdict and the deference that must be accorded to it is a bedrock principle in our nation's jurisprudence. The defendant's conduct before, during, and after this trial also merits consideration. Instead of preserving, protecting, and defending our constitutionally established system of criminal justice, the defendant, the once and future president of the United States, has engaged in a coordinated campaign to undermine its legitimacy.
By criticizing your corrupt prosecution, he's allowed to do that. We have free speech in America. It's the First Amendment. It doesn't say free speech except when it's offensive to the court or offensive to some hack prosecutor. He's allowed, as the person who is being a political target, to use his voice to communicate that victimization to the rest of the country. It is a shame and a sham that prosecutors can't even recognize that. They're like, we're so sensitive that you, and our system is so fragile that you can't criticize their prosecutions. They're such little babies that it's undermining the entire institution. Are you kidding?
Far from expressing any kind of remorse for his criminal conduct,
he didn't do anything
wrong. The defendant has purposefully bred disdain for our judicial institutions and the rule of law.
You've bred that yourselves. Trump is just shining a spotlight down upon it. There's nothing he could have said or done absent your actions, but for what you've done to do the damage that has been done. You did it. If you were legitimate prosecutors who didn't bring hack cases, he would have nothing to say. We wouldn't be able to do shows on this day after day about just how bad you guys are.
And he's done this to serve his own ends and to encourage others to reject the jury verdict that he finds so distasteful.
We do reject it.
He has characterized these proceedings as corrupt, rigged, a witch hunt, or a sham too many times to tabulate. The defendant's rhetoric has only ratcheted up since this court's rulings on his motions to dismiss. He has been unrelenting in his unsubstantiated attacks upon this court and its family, individual prosecutors and their families, the witnesses, the grand jury, the trial jury, and the justice system as a whole.
Good.
The defendant has not only been held in contempt by other jurists in other matters, but this court alone found the defendant in contempt for 10 distinct violations of the order restricting extrajudicial speech.
We're talking about the judge's
in his legal
corruption
filings,
and the judge's corrupt
the defendant has used dangerous rhetoric in leveling accusations of intentionally unlawful and unconstitutional conduct on the part of this court and the prosecution. As this court has noted, the defendant's conduct, quote, constitutes a direct attack on the rule of law itself.
What? By using free speech, what is a direct attack on the rule of law? Saying that a prosecutor is a liar? That's an attack on the rule of law? That's what he's saying. That's how psycho they are.
The defendant has publicly threatened to retaliate against the prosecutors who have sought to hold him accountable in this and other matters, and the courts who have endeavored to fairly and faithfully adjudicate these matters.
Because you're criminals. You will
Such
be
threats are
punished if you
designed
broke the law.
to have a chilling effect, to intimidate those who have the responsibility to enforce our laws, in the hopes that they will ignore the defendant's transgressions because they fear that he is simply too powerful to be subjected to the same rule of law as the rest of us.
He cannot be held below the standards of law, below the presumption of innocence, below the protections of attorney-client privilege. Before he is convicted, how about you give him an actual fair jury of his peers, not a bunch of blue Democrats from New York? He is being penalized and being treated like he's a sub-citizen.
In his 2024 end-of-year report, United States Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts warned of the dangers of such conduct. Quote, public officials too, regrettably, have engaged in recent attempts to intimidate judges. For example, suggesting political bias in the judge's adverse rulings without credible basis for such.
There is credible basis for Merchan being a hack. He donated multiple times to stop Trump, donated to Joe Biden. Daughter communicated on a podcast that he hated Trump's tweets. The guy is as biased as we can find. His daughter worked for Democrats, made millions of dollars writing ads for Facebook ads that were pinging off of the trial that her dad was prosecuting. No evidence. And John Roberts was talking about disinformation and a bunch of nonsense. He sounded like a Democrat.
Allegations, end quote. Chief Justice Roberts continued, quote, attempts to intimidate judges for their rulings are inappropriate and should be vigorously opposed. Public officials certainly have a right to criticize the work of the judiciary, but they should be mindful that intemperance in their statements when it comes to judges may prompt dangerous reactions by others.
Okay.
Chief Justice Roberts also spoke of the
dangers
like
going outside Kavanaugh's house and shooting him,
which are, quote, magnified by social media, which provides a ready channel to instantly spread rumor and false information.
He's reading from John Roberts' Supreme Court report, and I flipped through it. It was pathetic. But he is using that as cover. What about the people who are out there outside Kavanaugh's house going to shoot him?
Put simply, this defendant has caused enduring damage to public perception of the criminal justice system and has placed officers of the court in harm's way.
Pathetic.
Tony Barrett.
In the probation report, which we just received this morning, the author had interviewed the defendant, noted that the defendant sees himself as above the law and won't accept responsibility for his actions. And that should be consistent with everything else that we've seen. Now, in a typical case, both the offense conduct and these other exacerbating factors would impact the appropriate sentence. But in this case, we must be respectful of the office of the presidency and mindful of the fact that the defendant will be inaugurated as president in 10 days. Any undischarged portion of a sentence has the potential to interfere with the defendant's performance of the duties of his office.
So does the appeal. This case should be dismissed.
The most sensible sentence prior to his inauguration is an unconditional discharge. The court has expressed an inclination to do exactly that because, in the court's words, quote, the most viable solution to ensure finality and allow defendant to pursue his appellate options is to proceed to sentence. As you know, in New York, a conditional discharge is authorized by penal law, quote, if the court, having regard to the nature and circumstances of the offense and to the history, character, and condition of the defendant, is of the opinion that neither the public interest nor the ends of justice would be served by a sentence of imprisonment and that probation supervision is not appropriate. An unconditional discharge is authorized if a conditional discharge is authorized and, quote, if the court is of the opinion that no proper purpose would be served by imposing any condition upon the defendant's release.
This is the prosecutor.
These crimes are felonies.
Trump's attorney will be up in a
set
minute.
forth in the record the reasons for its action. The American public has the right to a presidency unencumbered by pending court proceedings or ongoing sentence-related obligations.
Then dismiss it.
But imposing this sentence ensures that finality. Sentencing the defendant permits this court to enter judgment to cement the defendant's status as a convicted felon while he pursues whatever appeals he intends to pursue. And it gives full effect and respect to the jury's verdict
that shouldn't
while
be afforded
preserving
either
the defendant's ability to govern. People therefore recommend that this court impose a sentence of an unconditional discharge. Thank you.
Thank you. Counsel.
Trump's up. Trump's team, defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. I very much disagree with much of what the government just said about this case, about the legitimacy of what happened in this courtroom during the trial, and about President Trump's conduct fighting this case from before it was indicted, to while it was indicted, through the jury's verdict, and even to this day. What the government just said presupposes something that we disagree with very much, which was that this was an appropriate case to be brought. It was not. This case, without a doubt, knowing everything we know about the timing of the investigation, the fact that multiple prosecutors looked at the facts of this case, including prosecutors within the district attorney's office in New York County, and made a decision not to bring charges. As the court knows, shortly after President Trump announced his intention to run for re-election, this case was started for what amounted to a third time, which brings us ultimately to where we are today. A lot of what the government just said presupposes that this case is legally appropriate and that the charges that were brought by the people were consistent with the laws of New York. Again, we very much disagree with that, and as everybody has been noted, because it's true, we certainly intend on appealing that. And it's not, by the way, just counsel and President Trump that feels that way. There's many, many, many legal experts that share the same views that I just said, which is that legally this case should not have been brought, both based on the facts that were established at trial and also on the legal basis for which they were brought. But it's also not just the legal experts, not just counsel, and not just President Trump, but the majority of the American people also agree that this case should not have been brought.
Never. That's why we
The
voted.
interesting thing about the fact that there was a trial for the first time in our history, a criminal trial during an election season, is that the American voters got a chance to see and decide for themselves whether this is the kind of case that should have been brought. And they decided. And that's why in 10 days, President Trump is going to assume the office of the President of the United States. And certainly we're here for the court to sentence President Trump to an unconditional discharge. And for that, it's a very sad day. It's a sad day for President Trump and his family and friends. But it's also, in counsel's view, a sad day for this country, because this was a case, without a doubt, that was brought by a district attorney who promised that he would go after President Trump if elected, and felt like he had to go through with that promise. And so that's sad. And I hope, and I know that President Trump shares this view, that this will never happen again in this country.
Never.
And so
Never.
we certainly understand where we are today. We very much intend on pursuing an appeal of this verdict and what happened during this investigation. And we certainly believe that the only appropriate sentence, if one's to be imposed at all, which we very much believe it shouldn't be, and that the case should be dismissed, is a sentence of an unconditional discharge. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Thank you. Would your client like to be heard?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This has been a very terrible experience. I think it's been a tremendous setback for New York and the New York court system. This is a case that Alvin Bragg did not want to bring. He thought it was, from what I read and from what I hear, inappropriately handled before he got there. A gentleman from a law firm came in and acted as a district attorney, and that gentleman, from what I heard, was a criminal or almost criminal in what he did.
Colangelo.
It was very inappropriate. It was somebody involved with my political opponent. Part of the records that we're talking about, they're saying, I just noticed where he said I was falsifying business records. Well, the falsification of business records, as they said, was calling a legal expense in the books where everybody could see them, a legal expense. In other words, that legal fees or legal expense were put down as legal expense by accountants. They weren't put down by me. They were put down by accountants. I didn't call them construction, concrete work. I didn't call them electrical work. I didn't call them, they called a legal fee or a legal expense. And for this, I got indicted.
Yep.
It's incredible, actually. Now, if you look, my attorney alluded to it. the top legal scholars and legal pundits in this country, the ones that are quoted all the time on television, that are making their views felt, and highly respected people, have said, everyone, virtually everyone that I know of, haven't seen any to the contrary, not one. And none of these people are not exactly friends of mine, to put it mildly. But they all said this is a case that should have never been brought. It's an injustice of justice. Very respected Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Judge David Rifkin, a wonderful man who just passed away, by the way, Greg Jarrett, Ellie Honig from CNN, of all places. CNN said that, Paul Ingrassia, Alan Dershowitz. They all said this is not a case that should be brought.
Viva Friyay.
Not think about it. Legal expenses are down as legal expenses, and I get indicted for business records. Everybody should be so accurate. It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. And the people of our country got to see this firsthand because they watched the case in your courtroom. They got to see this firsthand, and then they voted, and I won and got the largest number of votes by far of any Republican candidate in history, and won, as you know, all 7 swing states.
Yep.
Won conclusively all 7 swing states, and won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. And they've been watching your trial, so they understood it. I wasn't allowed to use the lawyer-client privilege or the reliance on counsel. I had a lawyer that made this deal, and he admitted that. And he was also a totally discredited person. We weren't allowed to use the information from the Southern District that totally discredited him. It wasn't allowed to be put in.
Thanks, Judge.
And that was terrible, unbelievable. And this is a man who's got no standing. He's been disbarred on other matters, unrelated. And he was allowed to talk as though he were George Washington. But he's not George Washington. He shouldn't have been allowed. The Southern District did a book of approximately 28 pages where I've never seen anything like it. They excoriated him. You wouldn't let it be put into evidence. So he was able to testify as a witness, and I think it's a disgrace to the system. I was under a gag order. I'm the first president in history that was under a gag order where I couldn't talk about aspects of the case that are very important. I guess I'm still under, so probably I won't do it now. I assume I'm still under a gag order. But the fact is that I'm totally innocent.
Amazing.
I did nothing wrong. They talked about business records, and the business records were extremely accurately counted. I had nothing to do with them. That was done by an accountant or bookkeeper who I think gave very credible testimony and was corroborated by everybody that was asked. And with all that's happening in our country today, with a city that's burning to the ground, one of our largest, most important cities burning to the ground, with